When I got into the cab, I asked the driver if she could take me to Alderson Women's Federal Prison. The driver said yes. She takes people there all the time. It's been 13 years since my arrest in 1997. I fought to get my case dismissed every day. I lost, and now I am on my way to Alderson Prison Camp. I can't believe it was only last night that I was preparing to self-surrender to a prison in West Virginia. Last night I sat down on the carpet in my room and started to read the instructions sent to me by the prison. The first sentence listed my expected time of arrival with a warning that if I were even a minute late, a bench warrant would be issued for my arrest. It also told me what items I was allowed to bring to prison. As per the instructions, I brought my driver's license with me. I was allowed to bring in one religious item, so I brought the little Jewish stars my Aunt Bronca gave me. I brought a credit card for the plane trip and cash from my commissary account at the prison. The hardest part of this new chapter in my life is knowing I was leaving my mother and Allie for 2 years. I kissed my mother and my beloved Maltese, Allie, goodbye. I felt so much pain, it was almost unbearable. But I tried not to let my mother see this. I was worried that while I was serving my sentence, my mother or Allie would get sick and I would not be there to help. This too was very painful. I felt like I was in shock as I stood in front of Alderson Women's Federal Prison. I knew I had to report to the prison officials, but I did not know what would happen to me afterwards. As I entered prison, I had one thought: God help me.
Oh, your chest.
walked into the receiving and discharging unit, and the door behind me shut loudly. I immediately knew I was no longer in the free world. I was very, very conscious that I was in a place that wasn't safe for me. There were a number of correctional officers standing near me. They did not look or talk to me as I stood there, uncomfortable, not knowing what I was supposed to be doing. I noticed two officers who were openly flirting with each other. I didn't expect to see that. It was creepy. I had never been in a room where the entire ceiling was made up of fluorescent lights. I had to close my eyes, and even that didn't prevent the sudden and immediate headache. After a few minutes, a guard signaled me to follow him, and he put me into a large holding cell. I noticed two other women sitting and talking to each other at the other end of this holding cell. I chose to sit down quickly by myself and as far as I could away from the other two women. I had never been locked in a room before, and I felt afraid. It was the first time in my life I was shaken, and I knew instinctively I had to find a safe place in my mind in order to overcome my fear. I forced myself to think of a warm and good memory to take my mind off the fear. I went to one of my favorite memories. It was one of many I had about my father. My father drove me to the airport to see me off to college. He would board the plane with me and stay until the very last possible minute. And then he would stand inside the terminal watching my plane take off and never leave me till we were up in the air. He never left me. Never. And he always made me feel safe. I would bring up this memory many times as it gave me such joy, and it helped me to survive. After feeling a little more calm, I said hello to the two women sitting at the other end of this large cell. We spoke for a few minutes. I wasn't sure whether we were allowed or supposed to speak with each other, so we didn't speak much. I think we were all concerned the guards wouldn't like us talking. The women had a lunch bag and offered it to me, with a warning. They said, "The prison calls the sandwich a bologna sandwich, but we call it mystery meat because no one really knows what we're eating." The cell was freezing. I asked the women if there was a way to lower the settings. They laughed and said the guards keep it intentionally cold, and if you ask, they will probably make it colder. I had no idea what to expect once I was in prison. I was shocked by how old, decrepit, and moldy the walls were. I was uncomfortable sitting in the cell. The metal seats were hard, and I was in pain sitting on them. I didn't have a sense of time because I left my watch home and there were no clocks I could see. After what felt like a long time, a female guard came over to get me. She signaled me to follow her. I had no idea where this guard was taking me. We walked down the hall from the cell, and she led me into a cold and dingy room on the right side of the hall. I was shocked to be in this dirty room. The guard clearly had an attitude towards me. She was in control. She was superior, and she seemed to be enjoying my clear discomfort. I could see that both the sink and the toilet were stainless steel. I had never seen that before. It looked cold. I looked up and saw a camera with its lens facing the toilet and was horrified at the thought that somebody was watching us. She stood facing me and started grunting instructions to me. Take off your clothes. She was cold and I could see no emotion in her eyes. I was keenly aware that I had never been ordered to take off my clothes. I slowly took off my sneakers and socks and placed them on the dirty floor. I then slowly took off my t-shirt. I looked at the dirty floor and quickly folded my t-shirt and placed it on top of my sneakers and socks. I felt I was no longer in control of my life, and I continued to undress. I took off my pants, folded them, and placed them in my little pile. I hesitated and then slowly unhooked my bra. Once I put this in the pile, I covered my breasts with my hands. I felt truly naked in front of her. She signaled me to finish, which meant, don't stall. Take off your panties. I did, and added them to the pile of clothes next to me. I was now naked in front of a complete stranger. I didn't know what would happen next. The guard spoke and ordered me to pee in front of her. I walked to the toilet. I sat down to pee. She said, "Wait, I am going to watch you pee." I felt humiliated. The whole process of taking off my clothes and then having to submit to having a stranger order me around was horrible. I had to do whatever she asked. This was prison, and others were now in charge of me. She then told me to stand up and lift up my breasts. I could feel her hands touching my breasts to make sure I had no drugs or paraphernalia hidden underneath them. But the worst part was about to come. She ordered me to bend over and then took her time to walk and stand behind me. She then told me to spread my cheeks with my hands and then to cough. She checked my anus and vagina for drugs and paraphernalia again. At this moment, I was more humiliated than at any other time in my life. It didn't take more than those 10 seconds to teach me my first and most important lesson in prison. Put all feelings away. Showing any display of emotion would be dangerous, and I knew it. I sat in the same spot as before, only this time, the impact of having a stranger touch me in personal places was something I couldn't get out of my mind. A few hours later, I was summoned by the same female officers to follow her. I was told to put my pointed finger into black greasy stuff and then place it on a spot marked for that finger. I was told to stand against the wall for a mugshot a few feet away. I had seen mugshot scenes on TV, so I knew I had to face front while they took my picture. I was told to stand there while an ID was being printed for me. Within a few moments, I got the ID. It had my picture, my date of birth, my height, and a number. The officer said, "Memorize the number, because when we call you, we expect you to respond by saying your number." She tested me and asked me who I was, and I looked down at my ID and said, "4, 8, 5, 2, 3, 0, 5, 3. And almost immediately I flashed back to my Uncle Alex, my grandmother's brother, who had a number tattooed on his arm at Auschwitz, the place my Aunt Brunka and mother survived. And I remembered what my mother said to me the night before I left for prison. Prison would be harder for you than concentration camp was for me. I said, "Are you crazy? You were in Auschwitz. How could you compare the two?" She said, "I was 12. You are 60. She knew something I was about to find out, and she was not wrong.